A ghost. One dark and gloomy night, I was sitting in my bedroom reading ghost stories. The stories were very scary. A storm was brewing outside my window. The wind began to howl, and the trees shook and bent in the wind. Lightning started to flash across the sky. I felt uneasy as I heard the low rumble of thunder. I glanced around my room. The shadows were deep and dark. The ghost stories were making my imagination play tricks on me. I thought that the shadows were moving. I looked under my bed to make sure that nothing was under there. I hid under the covers and peeked out. I was starting to hear things. A big streak of lightning flashed across the sky, and a loud clap of thunder made me jump. I was very nervous. All of a sudden, I heard a noise. It was coming from my closet. I thought that it must be a ghost. I looked out from under my covers and waited for the ghost to appear. My face was white, and I was very, very scared. Then I heard the noise again. Yes, there was definitely a rustling in my closet. I stayed very still and did not make a sound. I watched the closet and hoped that the ghost would not come flying out at me. Something started to come out of the closet. I squeezed my eyes shut. I didn't dare look at the ghost. I heard it come out of the closet. I felt it jump up on my bed. I was still too scared to look. Then the ghost made a noise. It said, "Meow." I opened my eyes and saw my kitten standing there. It was my kitten that had made the rustling noises in the closet. I laughed and felt very foolish. I have decided not to read ghost stories on dark, stormy nights. I think my imagination plays tricks on me when I read ghost stories on nights like
Personal computers. During the 1980s and 1990s, personal computers became very widespread. The use of the computer has changed people's lifestyles in several ways. Before 1980, hardly anyone owned a computer. Only governments and large companies had computers. But throughout the 1980s and 1990s, computers became much cheaper, faster, and smaller, and they held much more memory. More and more people were able to afford to buy a computer. By the year 2000, computers had become very common. For many people, the personal computer is used mainly for performing calculations and for word processing. For example, people can calculate their finances on the computer. They can also use the computer to type their written documents, such as essays or letters. Many people enjoy playing games on their computers. Some people like to play chess or checkers on their computer. Other people prefer games that require fast reflexes and fine coordination. Computer games were very simple during the early days of the 1980s. Today's computer games show detailed images and sounds. Another very popular use of computers involves communication. Many people keep in touch with their friends and relatives by using electronic mail or email. Email allows people to send letters instantly to people far away. It is even possible to attach pictures to one's email messages. Many people also like to use their computer to gain information on the Internet. The Internet is a vast network of electronic pages where people can find information on many different topics. For example, people can read newspapers and magazines on the Internet. Personal computers have only existed for a short time, but for many people, those computers have quickly become a very useful part of everyday life. Eating out. Many people enjoy the experience of going out to eat at a restaurant. It is enjoyable to eat one's favorite foods or to try some entirely new food. Going out to a restaurant is also fun because it allows a change from the usual routine of eating at home. There are many different kinds of restaurants. One popular type of restaurant is the fast food restaurant. When ordering fast food, you must first wait in line at the front of the restaurant and then order food from the counter. After paying, the food is quickly delivered and you can then take the food to a table where you can enjoy your meal. In most restaurants, you don't have to go to a counter to order your food. Instead, you are taken to a table soon after entering the restaurant. There, a waiter comes to give you a menu. You can choose your meal from the foods that are listed on the menu. After ordering, it takes some time to prepare your food. After a while, the waiter brings your meal to the table. When you are finished eating, the waiter brings the bill or check. You then pay for the meal and leave some extra money as a tip for the waiter. In some restaurants, the waiter does not bring the meal to your table. Instead, after you are taken to a table, you then go to a counter called a buffet. There you can select different types of foods, such as salads, soups, meats, breads, vegetables, and desserts. After putting the food on your plate, you return to your table. After eating, you can return to the buffet to get more food. Other restaurants can be very fancy. They may have beautiful decorations, and they may have food that is prepared by expert chefs. These restaurants may also serve fine wines with the food. Of course, these restaurants are very expensive. At these restaurants, it is often necessary to reserve a table by telephoning the restaurant in advance. Different restaurants specialize in different kinds of food. Fast food restaurants may specialize in hamburgers or chicken. Some restaurants specialize in steak or seafood. Other restaurants specialize in foods that belong to a certain nationality. For example, many restaurants specialize in Italian, Mexican, Chinese, Indian, or Thai food. Eating out at a restaurant can be a fun and tasty experience. What is your favorite kind of restaurant?
My friends. Two of my best friends are named John and Jane. John and Jane are related to each other. In fact, they are brother and sister. Not only are they brother and sister, but they are also twins. Their mother gave birth to them only a few minutes apart. I first met John and Jane when we were only 5 years old. We went to kindergarten classes at the same school. Because the house where John and Jane lived was close to my family's house, I often walked to school with John and Jane. When we weren't at school, John and Jane and I often played together. Sometimes we would play sports and games. Sometimes we would play in the forest, looking for birds and animals. On rainy days, we would stay inside and play with toys and dolls. On warm summer days, we would go swimming in the lake that was near the place where we lived. I often visited John and Jane at their house. On many occasions, I had lunch at their place. John and Jane's parents were very nice to me. Of course, John and Jane often visited my house, too. My parents enjoyed it when John and Jane came over for lunch. When I became older, I remained friends with John and Jane. Sometimes we would study or do our school homework together. Sometimes we worked at the same part-time jobs to make extra money. We often helped each other in various ways. Sometimes I did a favor to help John or Jane, and sometimes they did favors to help me. Eventually, when we grew up, I moved to a different town. Both John and Jane also moved to different places, but I am still good friends with John and Jane. 2 years ago, I went to Jane's wedding, and last year, I went to John's wedding. I think I will probably always be friends with John and Jane. Having friends is very nice. I am very lucky to have had good friends such as John and Jane. Advice to a student from a foreign country. My advice to a student from a foreign country would be to talk, talk, talk. Talk as much as you can to the people who live in the place that you are visiting. Talk to them and practice your new language skills. Learn all the funny sayings and different words that make up their language. Talking is the only way to really learn a language. Listen to people and talk to people. If you talk to people, you will also learn about their culture. I have a friend from Japan. His name is Nori. He often comes to see me just so that he can practice his English. He gets confused about words that sound the same but mean different things. He was asking me about the words see and see. I explained to him that they do sound the same, but they are spelled differently, and they mean different things. Nori is learning some of our funny sayings from different people. One morning, I asked him how he was, and he said, "Alive and kicking." Another morning, when I asked him how he was, he said, "So-so." He laughs about these strange sayings that we use. He is learning English quickly because he spends a lot of time with English-speaking people. He likes to have lunch with my friends and me because we ask him questions about his homeland, and he answers us in English. If he doesn't understand our questions, we spend time explaining what we mean to him. He says that he enjoys being here. He thinks that the people are very friendly. We enjoy speaking to him and helping him to learn English. We also enjoy learning about his country. It is enjoyable for us to meet new people and learn about new things.
A life experience. My friend Lanny and I went to Burger King yesterday. We ordered a big order of French fries and a couple of drinks. Lanny got a strawberry milkshake. I picked out a table near the window so we could look at the people passing by. As we were sitting there, we heard our favorite song, Butterfly, by the band Crazy Town, come on the radio. We looked at each other with big grins on our faces and started singing and dancing. It was great fun. Many people began staring at us, wondering why we were so happy. We didn't care. We just kept on moving and enjoying ourselves. The song ended and we were almost finished our food. We sat and talked about what was happening in our lives. She had just bought 4 new t-shirts for the summer. The new sandals she had gotten for her birthday had given her really bad blisters on the sides of her feet. When she wore other shoes, she had to wear band-aids on the blisters. I told her that I had bought 4 new CDs. I love music. As we finished our conversation, we finished off our drinks. I like going out with Lanny and talking. Lanny is my best friend, and I can talk to her about anything. I am glad I have her to share my life with, even if it is as simple as going to Burger King and eating French fries. Lanny and I are planning to travel together, so we are trying to save our money. Our French fries and drink only came to about $6, so we didn't feel too bad about spending our money. I wonder, though, if McDonald's would have been cheaper.
Easter. Traditionally, Easter has been one of the most important holidays of the Christian religion. For Christians, the Easter holiday celebrates the death of Jesus Christ, who died for the benefit of all people. The exact date when Easter is celebrated is different each year, but it is always held in early spring, during March or April. There are 2 very important days that make up the Easter holiday, which occurs during the spring season. The first of these days is called Good Friday. Christians recognize Good Friday as the day when Jesus suffered and died on behalf of humanity. The second of these days is called Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday occurs 2 days after Good Friday. Christians celebrate Easter Sunday as the day when Jesus rose from the dead and went to heaven. For Christians, Easter is the most solemn holiday of the year. Many people attend church services on Good Friday and on Easter Sunday. Easter is also a time for celebration. Some Easter traditions come from old springtime festivals that existed even before Christianity. One of the traditions associated with Easter is the painting of Easter eggs. People take chickens' eggs, make them hollow, and then paint them with beautiful colors. Some people paint very beautiful and complex designs on the Easter eggs. Another Easter tradition is the Easter Bunny. According to tradition, the Easter Bunny is a magical rabbit that visits the homes of children on the night before Easter Sunday. The Easter Bunny hides chocolate candies shaped like eggs throughout the child's house. On the morning of Easter Sunday, the children must search throughout the house to find these many hidden treats. The Easter holiday is an important time, both as a religious holiday and as a celebration of springtime.
A rainy day. The clouds were very gray. There was a loud boom that came from the sky. A bolt of lightning struck down a tree. All of a sudden, buckets of rain came pouring down. Jane and Bill were walking in a park when the rain started. Jane wanted to take pictures of the flowers, but the rain got her camera wet. She had to put it away so that it wouldn't get ruined. Jane was going to hide under a big tree to stay dry, but Bill told her that was not a safe idea. He said that she could get hurt if the lightning hit the tree. The tree could break and fall on her, or the lightning could even hit her. The air was very chilly. Jane and Bill put on their sweaters and raincoats to keep warm. Jane took her umbrella out and put it up. They both walked under it to stay dry. The ground was really wet and muddy. Bill and Jane were very glad that they remembered to wear their boots. They ran through the puddles, getting mud and water all over the back of their pants. As they were running and having fun, they saw some ducks. There were 5 of them splashing around in a pond. The ducks were not afraid of water. They swim in the water all the time. Jane and Bill saw some big bullfrogs near the pond. The frogs jumped into the pond when they heard Jane and Bill coming. After a little while, Jane and Bill decided to go home. They got into some dry clothes. Jane started to sneeze. She had gotten a little bit too wet. Bill noticed that the rain had stopped. "Look outside, Jane," he said. Jane wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and looked outside. There was a beautiful bright rainbow across the sky. Violet, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. The rainbow shone high in the sky. "I wonder if there's a pot of gold on the other side," Jane asked. She had once been told that leprechauns lived on the other side, handing out money to those that made it to the rainbow's end. Bill didn't believe there was a pot of gold. Jane ignored Bill, though, and started off across the field to claim her big pot of money. Let's hope Jane finds her way back home safe and sound with a big pot of gold.
Being a good citizen. Every society has laws that regulate the way people behave. A good citizen should obey laws. However, there is more to being a good citizen than merely obeying laws. There are many other things that people can do to make their society a pleasant one for every person. One way to be a good citizen is to be polite in everyday activities. For example, when passing through a door, A considerate person will hold the door open for a person who is close behind. Holding doors open is especially important when someone is carrying a heavy load. Being a good citizen is very important when traveling on the roads and streets. Pedestrians, bicyclists, and car drivers should all follow the rules of the road. Bicyclists should yield to pedestrians, and car drivers should yield to both bicyclists and pedestrians. Drivers should also allow other drivers to merge into their lanes. Also, drivers should avoid honking their horns except when this is necessary. A good citizen will also avoid doing things that interfere with others. For example, a considerate person does not smoke cigarettes in areas where this might irritate others. Also, a polite person avoids playing music so loudly that other people will be annoyed. And, of course, a good citizen avoids littering or making a mess. Other ways of being a good citizen involve greater effort. Some people serve their community by doing volunteer work of some kind. Other people help by donating money to a charity. Another way to serve the community is to donate blood. Blood donors are needed so that there will be enough blood available to help people who are sick or injured. Being a good citizen is very helpful for the community, and it also gives a feeling of satisfaction and pride.
Hobbies. Hobbies are activities that people do in their spare time for the sake of enjoyment. A hobby usually involves work of some kind, but the work is fun for the person who does it. Some people enjoy their hobbies very much and like to spend much time on those hobbies. There are many different hobbies that people enjoy. One of the most popular hobbies is gardening. Many people enjoy growing beautiful flowers or tasty vegetables in a garden near their house or apartment. People who have a garden enjoy seeing the results of their work when flowers show their bright, beautiful colors. But gardeners also enjoy the tasks of gardening itself. They like to work in the soil, planting and watering their flowers. Another popular hobby is photography. Some people enjoy taking pictures of the people and places around them. People who enjoy photography may sometimes buy expensive cameras that allow interesting photographs to be taken. But even people who have only a basic camera can still take beautiful pictures. For many people, car repair is a favorite hobby. Some people enjoy looking at the engine and other parts of their cars. Those people make repairs or improvements to their cars. Of course, this is a useful hobby, but many people enjoy fixing up a car simply because they enjoy working with cars. Some people collect objects as a hobby. For example, some people collect postage stamps, and some people collect coins. It can be very satisfying to find the missing parts of one's collection, especially when the stamps or coins are very rare. Of course, these are just a few of the many hobbies that people enjoy. Do you have any hobbies that you enjoy?
Life. A small town. I grew up in a small town. There were only about 2,000 people who lived in the town where I grew up. When a town is very small, it is also called a village. My village was surrounded by many farms and many lakes. The house where my family lived was near the middle of the town. On the streets where we lived, most of the houses were similar in size, but many of them had different shapes and different colors. Each house was surrounded by a yard, where people grew their lawn and their garden. Often, I would walk from my house to the downtown part of the village. Downtown is the area where the stores and shops of a town are located. Because I lived in a small town, it was a short walk to the downtown area. Along the main street, there are several different kinds of stores. Some stores sold food, some stores sold clothing, and some stores sold hardware or building supplies. It was also a short walk to the schools in my town. When I went to elementary school, it would take about 10 minutes to walk to the school. Some of my friends lived on the same street where I lived. Sometimes we walked to school together. During the summer months, many people came from the big city to visit our village. The people liked to get away from the busy streets of the city. They enjoyed the quietness and the slow pace of village life. They also liked to spend their vacations near the lakes that were near the village. People from the city often said that people who live in villages seemed very friendly. When I grew up, I left my village and I went to work in a larger town. But sometimes I like to go back and visit the place where I grew up. Summer jobs. In North America, many young people attend high school, college, or university. But during the summer months, most of those students work at a summer job. For most students, there are no classes during the months of July and August, and sometimes none in May and June also. Having a summer job allows students to make money that they will need during the rest of the year. They need this money because it costs a lot of money to pay for university or college. Of course, students also want money to spend on things that are fun also. Many students have summer jobs that involve working with children. For example, some students work at children's camps, where they teach children various skills and games. Some students work as lifeguards at swimming pools and at beaches. Some students do heavy work in their summer jobs. For example, some students find jobs as construction workers. Other students work in factories, and some students work on farms. There are other students who find jobs mowing lawns or collecting trash. Quite a few students work in stores. Some of these students have jobs as cashiers, and some have jobs putting products on store shelves. Other students work in restaurants, as waiters or as cooks. Other students work in offices. Some of them work as assistants for other employees. Their tasks might include typing letters, programming computers, or delivering mail. Some students enjoy their summer jobs very much, and they find those jobs to be a pleasant break from studying. Other students do not really enjoy summer jobs, but find their jobs to be a nice way to make new friends. But nearly all students who have summer jobs are pleased to have the chance to earn some extra money.
Two great artists, Leonardo and Michelangelo. Many people admire the paintings and sculptures that artists create. Some very beautiful paintings and sculptures were created by two men who lived in the same country at the same time. These men were Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. They both lived in Italy around the year 1500. Leonardo da Vinci is most famous for his painting called the Mona Lisa. This is perhaps the best-known painting in the world. The Mona Lisa shows the head and shoulders of a dark-haired woman. When people look at this painting, they are often captivated by her smile and by her eyes, which have a look of mystery. Another painting of Leonardo's is called The Last Supper. This painting shows a famous scene from the Christian religion. In this painting, Jesus Christ is seated at the middle of a long table, with his followers, the disciples, seated around him. Many of the paintings that were created at this time have a religious theme. Leonardo was not only an artist, he was also interested in engineering. He actually worked for some time as an advisor to a military leader, helping him to develop new machines for use in war. Leonardo also made rough drawings of machines that are similar to those that were invented much later, such as submarines and helicopters. Obviously, Leonardo was an extremely creative man. Michelangelo was about 23 years younger than Leonardo. In addition to being a painter, Michelangelo was also a sculptor, and many experts consider him the greatest sculptor of all time. One of his most famous sculptures is David, which is a statue of a young man who was a famous figure in the Bible. Another great sculpture of Michelangelo is called the Pieta. The Pieta shows Mary, mother of Jesus, holding the baby of her son across her lap. Michelangelo is also famous for painting the ceiling of a church known as the Sistine Chapel. The leader of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Julius, asked Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of this new church. This project required many years of hard work, and the Pope complained that it took too long. However, when the work was finished, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel was covered with beautiful paintings of many scenes from the Bible. Fortunately, many of the works of Leonardo and of Michelangelo can still be seen today in art galleries of Europe. During the past 500 years, the color of the paintings had faded somewhat, but in recent years, some work has been done to restore the paintings to their original appearance. The Vikings. About 1,000 years ago, people known as the Vikings were known and feared throughout Europe. The Vikings were the people of the northern part of Europe called Scandinavia, which includes the modern countries of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. The Vikings made their living by farming and fishing. However, by about the year 700, they began making attacks or raids upon towns along the coast of Europe in order to steal the wealth of those towns. The Vikings made their attacks very quickly and without any warning. They were very cruel to the people of the towns they attacked, and they sometimes destroyed the towns by burning down the buildings. In some parts of Europe, the local kings would often fight against the Vikings. Sometimes, however, the kings would pay the Vikings in order to persuade them not to attack. Although the Vikings were known as fierce warriors, they also built excellent ships. The wooden Viking ships, called longboats, were able to sail even in very bad weather. Many Viking longboats were about 20 meters long, but some were nearly 90 meters long. The Viking sailors used both sails and oars to move their ships. The Vikings traveled across a large area. They made many of their attacks in Britain, France, and Germany, but sometimes sailed south into the Mediterranean Sea. Other Vikings moved to the east and then south along the rivers of Russia. Some even went as far as the area that is now the country of Turkey. In some places, the Vikings decided to stay. Many Vikings settled in England and in France, and eventually they mixed with the local people. Other Vikings settled in Russia and also mixed with the people there. The most famous travels of the Vikings were in the Atlantic Ocean. Vikings sailed westward to the island of Iceland, where many of them stayed. Today, the people of Iceland were descended from the Vikings. Some Vikings sailed further west to the cold island of Greenland. Vikings lived in Greenland for several generations, but eventually they died out. Some Vikings had gone even further west and reached the Canadian island of Newfoundland. The Vikings only stayed for a few years, but they had reached North America about 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Gradually, the Vikings became converted to the Christian religion. They also stopped raiding the towns of Europe, and instead of fighting, they began trading with their neighbors. Today, the Scandinavian countries are known as very peace-loving nations. William
Radio stations. When I drive in my car, I like to turn on the radio. By listening to the radio, I can enjoy music and learn the latest news while I am traveling from one place to another. Of course, you can also listen to the radio at home or even at work. Listening to the radio is a popular activity for many people, and each city has many different radio stations. There are many different kinds of radio stations. Some radio stations provide news and information. Other radio stations have a talk format, where listeners can call the radio station's experts to discuss political affairs or to ask for personal advice. Although there are many radio stations that provide news and opinions, most radio stations are mainly devoted to playing music of some kind. For example, some radio stations play the songs that are currently most popular, often called the top 40 songs. Other radio stations specialize in particular types of music. There are some stations that play only classical music. Other radio stations mainly play jazz music. Some very popular radio stations play hard rock music. Others specialize in country music. Some people prefer radio stations that play rhythm and blues music. Still other people enjoy radio stations that specialize in soft, easy listening music. If you have a favorite kind of music, or even if you like to listen to all kinds of music, you can probably find at least one radio station that you will like. In addition to news and music, some radio stations provide other kinds of entertainment. Sometimes, a story from a book will be told over the radio. Occasionally, the words of a theatrical play may be heard on the radio. Even in the age of television and computers, the radio has remained an important source of entertainment and information. People will surely listen to the radio for a long time to come.
Airplane ride. Tasha signed a piece of paper which gave her a chance to win a free airplane ride. She put her name, address, and telephone number on that piece of paper. A few days later she got a telephone call. It was the man that was holding the ticket draw. Tasha didn't think she would win, but the man on the telephone said she did. She listened as the man told her where she would have to go to get her free airplane ride. She had to go near the town of Grimsby. She was allowed to pick a friend to go with her on the airplane ride. Tasha was so happy. She asked her twin sister Tanya to go with her. Tanya was very excited. Neither of them had been on an airplane before. When they got to the airplane center, Tasha and Tanya were nervous. They knew the airplane was small, so that meant only the pilot and them were going to be in the plane. Their mum took a picture of them beside the plane before they left. Tasha and Tanya hopped into the plane. They put their seatbelts on and got ready for takeoff. Tasha got to sit in the very front, right beside the pilot. Tanya sat behind Tasha. The girls laughed nervously as the plane started rolling down the runway. They went faster and faster, trees passing by quickly. There was a powerful surge making everyone's head jerk back. The plane started lifting off the ground. Up, up, and away! They were up off the ground and flying high in the sky. It seemed as though they could get anywhere within a matter of seconds. They flew from Grimsby to Beamsville, where they saw their high school. Then on to St. Catharines, and then Niagara Falls. They even flew over top of their house. They took pictures of their house. They could see their pond from way up there, too. The pilot asked Tasha if she wanted to fly the plane. Sure, Tasha said. So Tasha took the steering handle and began to fly the plane. She didn't really know how to fly it, So when she pulled the handle down, the plane shot upward. Both of the girls squealed. Tasha leveled the plane and flew smoothly from then on. Soon it was time to go back to Grimsby. The pilot took over again. We braced ourselves as the landing strip got nearer. The landing went smoothly with Tasha and Tanya beaming as they looked out at the ground. They hopped off of the plane, thanked the pilot, and ran to tell their mum about their wonderful experience.
In outer space? People have often wondered about whether or not there is life beyond the planet Earth. For years, the idea of intelligent life on other planets has been very popular. Many books and movies tell stories of what those forms of life might be like. Many scientists believe that very simple forms of life are likely to exist on many other planets. Under the right conditions, simple life forms might arise. Those conditions, which include moisture and warmth, might occur in many parts of the universe. Fewer scientists believe that very intelligent forms of life are likely to exist on many other planets. For intelligent life to evolve, a very long period of time is needed. During that time, the conditions on a planet must not be too harsh. Otherwise, the evolving life forms will die. The amount of water, heat, and various chemicals must be just right. If not, then complex life might never evolve. The conditions needed for intelligent life to evolve are very unlikely to occur on any one planet. However, some scientists believe that intelligent life might be common in the universe. Because there are so many stars and planets in the universe, there might be a few places that have intelligent life. However, those places are probably very, very far away. Other scientists disagree. They think that the conditions needed for intelligent life are extremely rare. Because of this, our planet might be the only place that has intelligent life. So far, it is impossible to know whether or not there are intelligent beings on other planets. But even if those beings do exist, it seems very unlikely that we will ever meet them.
Thanksgiving. An important holiday in North America is held during the fall or autumn season of the year. This holiday is called Thanksgiving. At this time of year, people join with their relatives to reflect upon their good fortune. Thanksgiving is a holiday that has a long history in North America. It was first celebrated when English settlers arrived in the eastern part of what is now the United States during the 17th century. When they survived the first hard year, they celebrated and gave thanks to God. They invited some of the native people to their Thanksgiving celebration because the native people had helped them to survive during the hard winter. The tradition of celebrating Thanksgiving continued and spread throughout North America. Each fall, during the time of the autumn harvest, people celebrated Thanksgiving. They gave thanks for the food of the harvest and for all the good things in their lives. Today, the tradition of Thanksgiving celebration continues. Families gather to eat a large bird called a turkey. They also eat pumpkin pie. This is a sweet dessert that is made from a large orange vegetable that grows on the ground. In the United States, Thanksgiving is celebrated on the fourth Thursday of November. But the following day, Friday, is also a holiday, and then comes the weekend. In Canada, Thanksgiving is celebrated on the second Monday of October. The reason for the earlier celebration in Canada is that the weather is colder than in the United States. This means that the harvest happens earlier in Canada, so Thanksgiving is held at an earlier date. But in both countries, Thanksgiving is a very pleasant time of year. Halloween. The holiday called Halloween is celebrated on October 31st of each year. Halloween is not an official holiday. Everyone goes to work or to school on Halloween, just as on any other day. But Halloween is still one of the holidays that children like the most. Why do children like Halloween so much? There are two reasons: costumes and candy. On the evening of October 31st, children dress up in strange and unusual costumes. They wear costumes that may look like a witch, a monster, or many other weird things. Putting on these scary costumes is a lot of fun for children. After the children put on their costumes, they walk from house to house during the evening. The children carry large bags with them. At each house, they stop and knock at the door. When an adult opens the door, the children shout, "Trick or treat!" The adult who opens the door pretends to be frightened and then puts pieces of candy into each child's open bag. At the end of the evening, the children have visited many houses and have collected much candy. During the next several days, they can feast upon the sweet candies that they have received. Another Halloween tradition is very unusual. In each house, a family gets a very large, round orange vegetable called a pumpkin. They cut a hole in the top of the pumpkin and empty out the flesh and seeds of the vegetable. Then they cut holes in the side of the pumpkin so that it appears to have eyes, a nose, and a mouth. When the carving is finished, the pumpkin looks almost like a person's face. When the pumpkin has been carved to look like a face, people place a light inside the pumpkin so that the vegetable seems to glow in the dark. This strange-looking face is called a jack-o'-lantern. On Halloween evening, one can see many of these jack-o'-lanterns, some of which are very beautifully carved. Halloween is truly a fun and interesting holiday, especially for children.
Methods of transportation. In the modern age, people often travel long distances. Sometimes people travel for reasons related to their work. Sometimes they travel as tourists. And sometimes people travel to visit relatives and friends. There are many different ways that people can travel. Some forms of transportation move people along the ground. Other methods of transportation move people across the water or through the air. Airplanes provide the fastest method of traveling. Modern jet airliners travel at about 1,000 kilometers per hour. These airplanes cruise through the skies almost 10 kilometers above the level of the sea. Jet airplanes allow people to travel great distances in a short time. For example, it is possible to fly across a great ocean, such as the Pacific or the Atlantic, in several hours. Ships were once the only way to travel across the oceans. Before airplanes, it took many weeks or months to travel around the world. Today, many people still travel by ship when crossing smaller bodies of water. Some ships, called ferries, allow people to bring their cars with them onto the ship. Some people also like to travel by ship as part of a holiday. These holiday ships, called cruise ships, stop in several interesting ports along the voyage. Trains are very popular in many places. In some places, such as Japan and France, trains travel at high speeds of about 300 kilometers per hour. These trains move people throughout the country very quickly and efficiently. Trains are also used to move people over short distances, such as the trip from one's home to one's workplace. Buses and cars are also widely used for transportation. Some people travel by bus or car for only short trips, but sometimes buses and cars are used for very long journeys. In North America, many people have driven across Canada or the United States in their cars. The wide, smooth roads allow cars and buses to travel quickly from one place to another. There are many different methods of transportation. Which one do you think is the best? Visiting the doctor. When people feel sick, they go to a doctor. But sometimes people visit the doctor even when they are not sick. Doctors can perform a medical checkup to find out if a person is healthy. By performing this physical examination, the doctor can identify any health problems that might be developing. During a checkup, the doctor examines your eyes, ears, and throat. The doctor uses a small flashlight to examine the eyes, ears, and throat. It is important to make sure that the eyes react normally to changes in light. It is also important to make sure that the ears and throat have a normal appearance. When the doctor examines your throat, he or she will ask you to open your mouth wide and say, "Ah." The doctor uses a stethoscope to examine the patient's heartbeat. The stethoscope hangs around the doctor's neck. By using a stethoscope, a doctor can hear the patient's heartbeat very clearly. While checking the patient's heart, the doctor also listens carefully to make sure that the patient's breathing is normal. The doctor also checks the patient's blood pressure. Blood pressure is measured by placing a cuff around the arm. Air is then pumped into the cuff, and this allows blood pressure to be measured. Having very high blood pressure or very low blood pressure is not good for one's health. It is better to be in between. Another part of the examination is a test of the reflexes. The doctor tests the patient's reflexes by gently hitting his or her knee with a small hammer. If a person has normal reflexes, the leg will extend suddenly. Sometimes a doctor may give injections using a needle as an extra part of the checkup. These injections, called vaccinations, prevent the patient from developing certain illnesses. Medical checkups can help to maintain health, but people should also maintain their health by leading a healthy lifestyle.
Elementary school. I go to Gainsborough Public Elementary School. I am in grade 8. I am known as the king-queen of the school this year. I feel very grown up. I love being the oldest kid in the school. My friends and I are told that we are examples to the younger kids in the school. That means we need to be good. I remember looking up to the grade 8 kids when I was younger. I remember thinking how big and wise they seemed to be. Now that I'm in grade 8, I hope that the younger kids see me as wise. I want to be a music teacher or maybe a nurse. My school counselor helps me plan for high school. I am nervous because I know I will not feel like the king anymore. Things will be so different. I am excited because I will be meeting so many new people. I am looking forward to my graduation. I will wear a pink silky dress. My shoes are a light pink too. My date's name is Chad. He is very nice. He is a good friend. I have known Chad since I was a little girl. I know that my future will be a bright one. I will miss all of my friends, but I know we will see each other again someday.
The middle child. I am the middle child of the family. I think it is nice in some ways. I have an older sister from whom I can borrow clothes from if she lets me. I get to meet my older sister's friends, although sometimes they think that I am too young to be with them. I have a younger brother. He is cute, but sometimes I have to babysit him. There are good things and bad things about being the middle child. My sister is the eldest child. She was the first child, so she spent time alone with my parents. She got lots of attention when she was first born. They took lots and lots of pictures of her. All her clothes and toys were brand new. I got her hand-me-downs. My parents were the strictest with her. They had lots of rules for her to follow. She is the first child, so they want her to be perfect. My younger brother is the baby of the family. I think that we all spoil him. We let him get away with some things that he shouldn't get away with. His room is always messy, and my mother never gets mad about that. She gets upset with me if my room is messy. She tells me that I'm old enough to keep a nice, clean room. It's no good thinking about which position you would like to hold in the family. You really don't have a choice about that. I think I like being the middle child. I can relate to my older sister and my younger brother. Yes, I think the middle is probably a good place to be.
Shakespeare. There has been many great writers in the history of English literature, but there is no doubt about which writer was the greatest. Many people consider William Shakespeare to have been the best writer who ever lived. William Shakespeare was born in the town of Stratford, England, in the year 1564. When he was a young man, Shakespeare moved to the city of London, where he began writing plays. His plays were soon very successful and were enjoyed both by common people of London and also by the rich and famous. In addition to his plays, Shakespeare wrote many short poems and a few long poems. Like his plays, these poems are still famous today. Shakespeare's most famous plays include Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, Hamlet, King Lear, Othello, and Julius Caesar. Usually, Shakespeare did not invent the stories that he told in his plays. Instead, he wrote his plays using stories that already existed. However, Shakespeare's plays told these stories in a more interesting way than ever before. Some of the stories were tragedies, some were comedies, some described historical events. In his plays, Shakespeare revealed a very wide knowledge of many areas of life. The characters in his plays discuss many different topics, often with the knowledge of experts. But what is even more impressive about these plays is Shakespeare's use of the English language. His vocabulary was very large, and Shakespeare seemed to have introduced many words to the language. Also, many of the phrases that are said by Shakespeare's characters are now used in everyday conversation. Today, writers often use quotations from Shakespeare's plays in their own works. But perhaps even the most impressive features of Shakespeare's plays are the characters within them. The many characters in his plays seem very different from each other, but they seem very realistic. The emotions they feel, the words they say, and the actions they perform are all easily understood. Many people who watch one of Shakespeare's plays will find that they know people who remind them somewhat of the characters in those plays. Shakespeare died in the year 1619, but his writings are still popular today. 400 years after they were written, the poems and plays were greatly admired by experts in literature, but also by people in general. Each year, hundreds of thousands of people enjoy attending performances of Shakespeare's plays. No other writer in the English language has remained so popular for such a long time.
Ice hockey. One of the most popular sports in northern countries is the game of ice hockey. Each winter, this sport is played by hundreds of thousands of children and adults in North America and in Europe. Ice hockey is a fast and exciting game that can make winter much more enjoyable. The game of ice hockey is played on a flat surface of ice called a rink. The rink is about 60 meters long and about 25 or 30 meters wide. At any time, each team has 6 players on the ice. On their feet, the players wear skates, whose thin metal blades allow fast movement along the ice surface. Learning to skate requires time and practice, but many people can skate very quickly and smoothly. In many ways, ice hockey is similar to soccer. However, unlike soccer, there is no large ball used in hockey. Instead, the players use a hard black rubber disc, which is called a puck. The players skate around the ice, trying to get the puck. They do not use their hands or feet to control the puck. Instead, they carry long wooden sticks, which are shaped in such a way that it is easy to push the puck along the ice. The players can pass the puck to each other by sliding it across the ice. To score a goal, a hockey player must shoot the puck into the net of the opposing team. But this is a difficult task. The net is less than 2 meters wide and is protected by a player called the goaltender. However, some players can shoot the puck very suddenly and with great power. Sometimes the sport of ice hockey can be quite rough. Players try to take the puck from their opponents by bumping into them at high speed. This is called a body check. Players are not allowed to hit each other with their sticks. If a player does this, then that player must be given a penalty by the referee, who enforces the rules of the game. Naturally, the sport of ice hockey is most popular in countries that have cold winters: Slovakia, the Czech Republic, and Germany. In addition, many people play hockey in the United States. In previous generations, ice hockey was considered a sport for men and boys only. However, in recent years, women and girls have been playing hockey much more frequently than in the past. Not only do many girls enjoy playing hockey for fun, but now women's hockey is officially a sport at the Winter Olympics.
Reading the newspaper. I often enjoy reading the newspaper. In my city, there are 3 different newspapers, and I look at different newspapers on different days. I find that each section of a newspaper has some interesting information. Most newspapers contain several sections that can be easily removed from the rest of the newspaper. The main section is found at the front of the newspaper. This section usually contains the most important news from around the world, from around the nation, and from the local area. Sometimes the main section also includes some pages that contain opinions about the news. The editors of the newspaper write an editorial opinion. Other writers provide many different opinions about current events. Also, some readers of the newspaper write letters to the editor in which they express their opinions. Another popular section of the newspaper is the sports section. This section contains information about many different sports events. The sports section provides scores and results from many games and competitions. Another section of the newspaper contains information about entertainment and the arts. The arts and entertainment section tells readers about new movies and plays. It also describes new books, music concerts, and art exhibits. Most newspapers also have a business section. This section provides information about new business deals and about the stock market. Many people read the business section of the newspaper to gain information and advice about investing their money. Finally, newspapers usually have a section for classified advertisements. This section allows people to advertise about things they want to buy or sell. It also gives notices about job openings. Reading the newspaper is surely a good way to keep informed about many different events in the world around us.
Chinese people in North America. In recent years, many people have moved to North America from China, but many people do not know that Chinese people have a long history in Canada and the United States. During the 19th century, both Canada and the United States were rapidly expanding to the west, toward the Pacific Ocean. In those days, there were of course no cars or airplanes to allow people and goods to move across the land. Instead, the best method of long-distance transportation was the railroad. Railway trains could move quickly across the countryside. However, there was one problem. Before the railway trains could run, railroads had to be built across very long distances. To build the railroads was a very big job. Many men would be needed because the distance was so long and the land was so difficult, with many mountains and rivers to be crossed. For the men who owned the railroad companies, it would have been too expensive to hire Canadian or American men to build the railroads, because those workers would only work for high wages. The railroad owners decided to get workers from overseas. Many Chinese men were willing to work for low wages because they were very poor. These men would work very hard and send much of the money back to their relatives in China. Thousands of Chinese men were brought to North America to work on the railroads. They did good work, but their employers treated them badly. The workday was very long, and working conditions were very unsafe. Many Chinese men died in accidents while constructing the railroads. Some Chinese women also came to North America, but there were many more men than women. After the railroads were completed, by about the year 1900, very few Chinese people were allowed to come to North America. Most people in Canada and the United States were not familiar with Chinese people and did not want strangers to come to their countries. Any Chinese person who came to North America had to pay an expensive tax. This made it difficult for Chinese men to bring their wives and families to join them in North America. Later, the governments of Canada and the United States made Chinese immigration illegal. Eventually, the people of Canada and the United States realized that their laws had been unfair. They changed the rules so that Chinese people could immigrate in the same way that people from other countries could do so. In recent decades, many Chinese people have moved to North America and have formed a very lively and successful community. Many cities, such as Toronto, Vancouver, San Francisco, and New York, have been enriched by Chinese culture. Chinese people are now very prominent in North America, just as they were many years ago.
The history of the English language. Most people know that the English language is spoken by millions of people around the world. However, few people are aware of the history of the English language. Today, English is one language, but in some ways, it's a mixture of many different languages. The English language is most closely related to a group of languages called the Germanic languages. This group also includes languages such as German and Dutch. About 1,500 years ago, these languages were not yet distinct from each other. Some of the people of Germany and the Netherlands then moved to England. Those people were called the Anglo-Saxons, and their language then evolved into English. Most of the basic words of the English language are derived from these very old Anglo-Saxon languages. For example, words for the parts of the body, for numbers, and for animals are mostly Anglo-Saxon words. Some new words were brought to England over 1,000 years ago by people who came from the Scandinavian countries of Northern Europe. Many words that begin with the letters SK, such as skin and skill, are Scandinavian words. A major change happened in the English language after the year 1066. In that year, England was conquered by a king from the northern part of France. He and his followers spoke French, so French became an important language in England. During the next few hundred years, the English language absorbed a very large number of French words. In fact, today's English dictionaries contain more words of French origin than of Anglo-Saxon origin. Part of the reason why the English language has so many words is that it often has two words for each idea, one word of Anglo-Saxon origin and one word of French origin. Many more words entered the English language a few hundred years ago when science and technology became more widespread. Most scientific and technical words are derived from words of the ancient languages of Latin and Greek. Because there are so many of these scientific and technical words in the English language today, the influence of Latin and Greek has been quite large. Other languages have also contributed many words to the English language. Some words have come from the Celtic languages, spoken in Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Many words have been added to the English language by immigrants who came to North America from various countries of Europe. Also, many more words have been adopted from the native languages of North America, Australia, and the Pacific, and from the languages of the peoples of Africa and Asia. All of these words have made English a very interesting language.
History of trial by jury. In most English-speaking countries, a person who is accused of a crime has the right to a trial by jury. In a trial by jury, the guilt or innocence of the accused person is decided by a group of 12 people called jurors who must listen to the evidence about the case. The idea of a trial by jury is over 800 years old, but there was a time when criminal cases were decided in other ways. Today, many of these methods seem ridiculous and cruel. Many accused people were forced to undergo a trial by ordeal. There were several different kinds of this trial. For example, in the ordeal by fire, an accused man was forced to carry a red-hot piece of iron in his hand. People believed that if the man were innocent, then the gods would protect him, and his hand would not be burned or blistered by the iron. Another form of the trial by ordeal was the ordeal by combat. If one person accused another of a crime, they would be forced to fight each other with some weapon. People believed that the gods would help the man who was right and allow him to win the fight. Yet another kind of ordeal was the ordeal by water. If a woman was accused of a crime, such as witchcraft, she might be thrown into a river with rocks attached to her. People believed that the gods would help an innocent woman and allow her to float on the water. Gradually, people realized that the trial by ordeal was a completely worthless way to judge a person's innocence or guilt. They wanted a less barbaric way to decide criminal cases. During the 12th century, a new method was introduced by one of the kings of England, Henry II. Henry said that criminal cases should be decided by the opinions of 12 honest men who knew about the crime, the victim, and the accused person. This was the beginning of trial by jury in English-speaking countries, and the method soon became very popular. People trusted this new method much more than they trusted the old methods. Later, the system of trial by jury changed somewhat. Instead of having a jury of 12 men and women who knew about the crime, juries were chosen so that the 12 people did not know anything about the crime. This change ensures that the jurors do not have any bias or prejudice about the case. When jurors do not know any of the people involved in the case, their decisions are more likely to be fair and accurate. Today, citizens in many countries are called occasionally for jury duty. This can be inconvenient for people who are busy with their work and family life. However, many men and women are willing to serve on juries because of a feeling of responsibility to society. The use of juries in criminal cases helps to ensure that justice is done.
African slavery in the Americas. One of the most tragic parts of the history of North and South America is the period of African slavery. For hundreds of years, many people were taken from Africa by force to work in the fields of many different countries in North and South America. When Europeans first came to the Americas, some of them realized that they might make money by growing crops and selling them in Europe. However, in order to make money, they would need a cheap source of labor. Few Europeans would come to the Americas to work for low wages, so instead, the landowners looked for slaves. In the areas of great farms or plantations, there were few Indians, so they used another source of slaves: Africa. The plantation owners usually obtained slaves by buying them from local kings in Western Africa. This led to many wars between rival kings within Africa who tried to capture each other's people in order to sell them as slaves. A few kings tried to avoid the slave trade, but this was very difficult. During a period of several hundred years, from the 1500s to the 1800s, about 12 million people were taken from Western Africa to the Americas. Many more people died as slaves before leaving Africa, and many more died on the ships that took them to the Americas. This was because the conditions on the ships were extremely unhealthy. The ships were far too crowded, and there was little food and water. When the African slaves arrived in the Americas, the plantation owners made them work on farms that produced goods such as cotton and sugar. In many places, they worked very hard, and many of the slaves died from overwork. They were then replaced by other slaves who arrived from Africa. However, many slaves survived despite the brutal conditions. In some places, the African slaves were able to revolt against the plantation owners. However, this was difficult because the slaves who had recently arrived spoke many different languages. Some slaves escaped into wilderness areas and were able to remain free from the plantation owners. As time went by, many people in Europe and in the Americas realized that slavery was wrong. By the 1830s, slavery had been ended or abolished in islands owned by the British and in parts of the United States. In the southern United States, slavery was ended in the 1860s during the Civil War. In some countries, such as Brazil and Cuba, slavery only ended in the 1880s. Today, many millions of people in North and South America are descendants of slaves who were brought from Africa. The effects of slavery have lasted for many generations, and there was much racial prejudice against African people when slavery ended. However, some have achieved success despite these disadvantages. Today, the people of African background in North and South America are a very important part of the population in many countries. Worries about physical appearance. Most people would like to have an attractive physical appearance, but some people become very worried about the way they look. This can sometimes lead them to do things that are unhealthy. For example, many women believe that they must be very thin in order to be attractive. They see pictures of fashion models who are very thin and then believe that an attractive woman must look the same way. However, many men prefer the appearance of women who are not so thin. In order to become thin, some women try to reduce the amount of food that they eat. When this is taken to an extreme, a woman might eat far too little food to remain healthy. Her weight may become dangerously low as she tries to become thinner and thinner. This condition is called anorexia, and it affects many thousands of women in Western countries. Anorexia is one of several conditions known as eating disorders. Another eating disorder is called bulimia. A woman who has bulimia will sometimes eat large amounts of food, but then will try to eliminate the food by vomiting. This is intended to prevent any weight gain, but it is also a very unhealthy behavior. Unfortunately, some women are concerned about being very thin, but some women have different concerns related to the appearance of their body. For example, some women believe that their breasts are not large enough and will undergo surgery to enlarge their breasts. In this surgery, some artificial substance is implanted inside the breast to make it larger. Many women have had this surgery, but many of them have suffered serious health problems as a result. In recent years, many men have also become very concerned about their physical appearance. For example, some men believe that they must become very muscular in order to have an attractive appearance. To achieve this appearance, some men use drugs called steroids, which make it possible to gain large amounts of muscle. However, steroids can have very unhealthy side effects. In addition to drugs, some men have used surgery to change their physical appearance. For example, Some men have had implants to make their arms, legs, or chest appear larger. It is unfortunate that so many people feel so unhappy about their physical appearance and that they do unhealthy things to change the way they look. Of course, everyone should try to be healthy, but people must also learn to accept their physical appearance. Many different body types can be attractive, but there is no single ideal body type. There is no need to use unnatural methods of changing one's body.
Physical fitness. In modern society, many people find that they do not get very much exercise. They travel by bus, train, or car, and they can move up or down in elevators. They have machines that do most of the heavy work that was once done by people. However, exercise is important for staying healthy. A person who exercises frequently will be physically fit. There are different aspects of physical fitness. One important element of being physically fit is called cardiovascular fitness. The word cardiovascular refers to the heart and lungs. If one's heart and lungs are in good condition, then one can exercise at a steady pace without soon getting tired. To develop cardiovascular fitness, it is important to perform some exercise that makes one's heart beat quickly. For example, a person can improve cardiovascular fitness by riding a bicycle, by running, by swimming, by rowing, or even by walking quickly. Some people go to special places called health clubs or gyms where they can use different exercise machines to develop their cardiovascular fitness. But many people improve their cardiovascular fitness by playing recreational sports such as tennis or soccer, or by dancing vigorously. By having good cardiovascular fitness, one is less likely to suffer from heart disease. Of course, there is one way to improve cardiovascular fitness that does not involve exercise. Stop smoking. Another important aspect of physical fitness is called flexibility. Flexibility refers to one's ability to stretch comfortably. For example, a healthy person should be able to touch his or her toes without bending the legs. People can perform various stretching exercises to improve flexibility. By being flexible, a person can avoid injuries that might otherwise affect their body. Yet another important aspect of physical fitness is the strength and endurance of one's muscles. Many people suffer from injuries that result, in part, from weakness of the muscles. Muscular strength and endurance can be improved by a variety of exercises. Some of these exercises involve lifting a weight, but other exercises simply involve pushing or pulling against the weight of one's own body. One example is an exercise called the push-up. In this exercise, a person lies on the floor with the face pointing down. The person bends his or her arms so that the palms of the hands are on the floor, next to the shoulders. The person then pushes with his or her arms, lifting the upper part of the body above the ground until the arms are straight. Before starting to do any exercises, it is a good idea to have a medical checkup. Some people do not want to exercise because they think it will be too much work. However, many people find that they feel very good when they exercise. Exercising can be an enjoyable and fun way to maintain health and fitness. The Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was one of the most famous people in American history. He was never a president of the United States, but he made great achievements in many areas of life, including business, literature, science, and politics. Benjamin Franklin was born in the city of Boston during the year 1706. In his early years, Franklin was very poor. As a young man, he worked for his older brother, who who was a printer. However, the two brothers soon argued with each other. Benjamin decided to leave, and he moved to the city of Philadelphia. He worked very hard and soon became a successful printer. He published his own newspapers, and he also published books called almanacs, which contained many wise sayings. Many of the wise sayings in Franklin's almanacs are still repeated today. Franklin's printing business was very successful, but he was also very interested in science. He performed experiments on the topic of electricity. Some of these experiments were very dangerous. In one experiment, Franklin was almost killed when he went outside during a lightning storm and flew a kite that had a metal key attached. However, Franklin was lucky enough to avoid injury, and he learned new facts about electricity. In addition to scientific research, Franklin was also an inventor. He invented a new kind of eyeglasses called bifocals. Bifocals are eyeglasses that allow people to see things that are far away, but also allow them to read things that are very close. Another invention was a new kind of stove for burning wood. This new stove was much more efficient than the older stoves had been. He also invented a lightning rod, which keeps houses safe from lightning. Franklin was also interested in making his city a better place to live. He started a public library, and he helped to organize a hospital and a fire department. In addition, he supervised the postal service, which operated profitably under his command. In his later years, Franklin became heavily involved in politics. For most of Franklin's life, the United States was not yet a country. Instead, the United States were still colonies of England, but Franklin encouraged other Americans to become an independent country. When the United States became a country, Franklin became the American ambassador to France. The French people liked Franklin very much. Franklin later returned to the United States, and he died in 1790. Today, many Americans still admire the brilliant achievements of Benjamin Franklin, who did so much to improve people's lives. The picture of Benjamin Franklin can be seen on the American $100 bill. Preservation of forests. Many thousands of years ago, much of the world's land area was covered in forests. Since that time, people have needed to clear the forests by cutting down the trees in order to make room for their farms and cities. Today, forests are still being cleared, and many people are worried that too much forest area is being lost. There are many reasons why it is important to preserve forests. One reason is that the trees inside the forests help to remove carbon dioxide from the air and put oxygen back into the air. This is important because scientists believe that too much carbon dioxide in the air might be causing the world's temperature to increase quickly. The forests might help to reduce this problem by absorbing carbon dioxide from the air. Another reason for preserving forests is to maintain many different species of plants and animals. The forests are the home of a huge variety of plants and animals, which will become extinct if the forests are destroyed. These plants and animals are both beautiful and interesting, but they also have practical benefits for people. For example, doctors believe that many diseases might be treated by chemicals that are obtained from forest plants. Forests are also important for providing wood or lumber, but sometimes people cut down too many trees for lumber. To preserve the forests, it is important to ensure that the amount of wood removed is not more than the amount of new wood that grows in the forest. Otherwise, the forest will gradually disappear. In many parts of the world, forests have already been cleared. In recent years, many forests have been cleared in South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. In other parts of the world, the forests have already been cleared a long time ago. There are only a few areas of the world where very large areas of forests have not yet been changed by people. These areas include the Amazon rainforest of Brazil and the northern forests of Canada, Alaska, and Siberia. Some countries have passed laws to protect their forests from being cleared. For example, a country can declare its forest areas to be a national park and prevent the forest from being cut down. However, this is very difficult for poor countries to do. The people may want to cut down the forest to obtain wood, to gain access to natural resources in the forest areas, or to have new land for farming. When forests are cut down to gain new farmland, however, people usually find that the soil is not very good for farming. It is a difficult challenge to provide opportunities for poor people of the countries and to protect the forests at the same time. However, it is very important that this challenge be met successfully because the forests will be needed by future generations of people. True or false? 1. Preservation of forests is important because the trees remove carbon dioxide from the air and replace it with oxygen. 2. Plants and animals should be preserved because they are beautiful and beneficial to people. 3. Cleared forest land is often excellent for farming. 4. People have been clearing the Amazon rainforest for years.